Hello and welcome everybody again to today, December 13th, 2023. It's Samantha here from How Clinics. And tonight joining us again is going to be Dr. Jamie Lee and Claudia Kazadi, our health coach as well. And tonight's topic is a little earlier than you're used to, but it's going to be called Balancing Acts. And what we're going to be looking at is managing weight during stressful times. And tonight, as we go through our webinar, we're going to go over a certain few topics, such as exploring cortisol and stress management. I will be giving you some practical behavioral tools that we can implement and have a look through. And we're also going to be looking at exploring alcohol consumption during these holiday seasons as well. So as we have individuals onboarding here, I'm just going to stop sharing this screen here. And I've got a few questions for individuals as you're watching that I would like to ask. So I'm just going to get access to that here. Sorry, excuse me, I'm pushing the wrong button. So I've got 3 questions I'm going to put out there that we're going to be covering topics over, and I'm going to launch the first question that we have today. So first question is, how do you usually respond to stressful situations? So I just want to put out there to get the feel as I deal with stress one way. I know Dr. Lee deals with another. Claudia deals it with another. They are coping mechanisms that we are using, whether they are, we always hope that they're always great and good tools, but sometimes we do have those ones that we've used over time that may not be as responsive to what our goals are. So the responses that we can have here for those is multiple choice. I've got eating more, we've got sleeping more, we've got exercising more, we've got drink more alcohol, and other. So while that's actually going on, I'm just curious to ask the team here as we're going on through. You guys, Dr. Lee and Claudia, tell me, what are some of your behaviors when it comes to stress?
Yeah, I actually exercise more. I've been doing that since really university, right? And even actually leading up to the day of the exam, the night before, I still would exercise. And for multiple reasons, right? One is that it takes your mind off what you're doing. But exercise actually has been helped to reduce stress dramatically, both from a physical perspective and mental perspective as well. And so that's a behavior that I've clung to all my life. When I get um, time pressured and stuff, that I still take a bit of time to actually do a bit of activity, just because I've actually become more efficient when I come back to studying and doing the tasks that I do. So that I would say would is important. I also tend to sleep better too as well. I can recall, back in the university days, I would stay up all night, which is counterproductive. But when I was in med school, because there was so much more workload, I actually went to bed earlier and got up earlier. And so my sleep pattern changed. My sleep routine changed a little bit and got better. And it kind of stuck with me all these years. So the two that jives with me is sleep more and exercise more.
And these are tools, sorry, I'll get to you in a second there, Claudia. And these are tools that over time that you've practiced and put in place for that stress response.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've done over and over and over, right? And and it's funny because the more stress that I feel, the more I feel the urge to actually go and exercise and release energy and steam. And when you do that, like what I notice is there is euphoric feeling, like a catharsis, right? And that allows me to refocus too as well, right? And so it's not just kind of bad stress, something good stress too as well, right? We do the same thing. So yeah, I do. Yeah.
And how about you, Claudia? Tell me about a little bit about your response to stressful situations.
I think I can say that I have 2 different response. Like I practiced 2 different response. Once prior to me learning more about my metabolism and how my body handles things, and one after that. Previous me would handle things with more eating and less of sleep. Sleep is something that I'm still working on it, but definitely eating has improved a lot. What I do now is what I learned is that walking helps me a lot to clear my mind. Especially now I know that barefoot on a cold cement or cold
Mm,
tile grounds me and just gives me that peace that I want so I can think clear.
mm,
So that's what I do, a lot of walking when I'm stressed. So it's to the point that my husband says, okay, is that you getting your hours or something bothering you? Your minutes, your walking minutes or so yeah, I walk a lot now and I definitely drink a lot more water. Sleep sometimes due to stress is not something that I can have the hours that I want, but still I'm mindful of it and working on it.
Yeah, and sleep is a tricky thing, eh? Samantha, meaning that, a lot of times when we have an acute stress, we wake up often in the middle of the night too, as well, right? And that's actually a natural response, right, when that happens. And then so, typically what I say to my sleep patients is that, um, throw in some activity actually will help you actually regulate your sleep, right? But the most important thing is if you do get up middle of the night and you can't fall back asleep, is actually don't sleep in the afternoon to catch up. Listen to your body to actually go to sleep earlier. The body will dictate its circadian rhythm, and based on your stress level, how much energy you need to recuperate yourself, the body knows that. So how much REM sleep it needs, how much deep slow wave sleep it needs to cause you to regenerate your body for the next day. And so yeah, it's definitely normal for people to have disrupted sleep, but usually it's just a short duration adjusted thing. Yeah.
Yes.
How
In
about you,
regards
Samantha?
to myself, I'm finding
Yeah.
myself, well, the response to stress is something different there. Yes, there may be some difference of eatings or desires that pull in there for comfort purposes and replenishment, but the tools that are necessary for myself when I notice I'm in those stressful situations is always trying to fulfill in a sense of control choices as I go on through. But for anyone out there is listening that knows me outside of the outside world, sleeping more is definitely a tool that I do use in regards to that, and the exercise. When it comes to control of a situation, I really do enjoy exercise myself because when I'm typically in a stressful situation or other known as maybe some anxiety points, the heart and my body, I'm not controlling it itself. But when I go to exercise, I'm actually controlling the heart rate at that point. So I love being on the treadmill, walking up and pushing the heart rate up to the 100 because I know I physically have put it there. So I'm gaining that sense of control as it goes. And I know by that time, if I've worked out or walked on that treadmill or outside, wherever it may be, I've increased my heart rate myself, that if it's done at an appropriate time, I can go home and sleep much better. I sleep so much better after exercise. And, we know that. And we've been told this by different coaches ourselves and things like that. But until you implement it and see, it may have been a 10% change or a 5% change, but still it's an amazing situation to go through. So thank you for answering those questions. What we have seen here is more percentage up and eating more. And then we do have others. Now, I'm just interested in what those others may be, and we'll kind of get there. I had a response to somebody here in our chat that was had mentioned here, sleep less. It's not a good response, but it's one I frequently find myself doing. So whether that's you're finding yourself doing that as a response to stress or as a tool for stress response. So that is an interesting factor there. So I'm just going to close that question period down. I think I can share those responses here. Now, the next one is that I'm going to launch here is going to be, do you think holiday stress impacts your weight loss? So I may not have actually done this one live. I'm going to try here. But if you do not see that poll, I'm going to have you reach out here. And it looks like it's going to be one in our chat section that I'm going to have you answer. And that is going to be, do you think holiday stress impacts your weight loss goals? And it's going to be, that's one of the topics that we're actually talking about today. And that's why we were here, is in regards to our stress, the moments, the holiday seasons, and actually looking into why we behave a little bit differently around a holiday itself and where those goals go. So if you're able to kind of pop in there some of those answers, and for some reason, I'm just going to stop sharing. I think now I figured it out. The next question is available to you to answer on the poll. I've got, what methods have you found the most useful in managing stress-related weight gain during the holidays? So we have options here of eating smaller portions. We've got limiting or avoiding alcohol consumption. We have increasing physical activity. And I've popped in there because this is what I'm going to talk about, is identifying negative thoughts and challenging them. So bringing on the challenge itself and taking on forward there. So please pop in and answer some of those questions as we go. I've got some answers to yes, like all stress and holiday stress is stress, it's special. Yeah. So any comments there from you guys in regards to?
You know, what I find is like, you know, because our holiday, it's a season, we call it holiday season, so it's very prolonged, right? And so you're bombarded with multiple parties and stuff like that. And you know, in my profession, you know, my holiday times is actually the most time I get off in a string of days. And so for me, I actually get to do things during the day, and so like running or biking and stuff. Usually running is what I do. And you'd be surprised if you do a bit of physical activity. And what the studies have shown is that when you do physical activity, your behaviors change automatically, whether you know it or not. And what it is that the behaviors are actually better the next 3 to 4 hours. So you tend to make better food choices, right? And so for me, like, you know, because I have extra time, I actually do a bit more physical activity, like particularly running or going to the gym. The other thing I like to do, and this is intentional, is fasting. I actually tend to fast. It's not on there. I tend to fast a lot longer too as well, right? And go through, you know, maybe just eating one meal a day, sorry, if I know I have another party or another gathering and stuff like that. So that's typically what I do. And the reason why I also fast is also it's a detox. You know, the body needs to cleanse itself of all this refined food that we're eating, the bit of alcohol consumption too as well. You know, and God knows sometimes how much we consume it. And you know, and hopefully this seminar will make us more mindful of that and give us some tricks and tips. And so, you know, I mean, my goal this holiday season is to limit the amount of alcohol consumption, right? So I like wine, so so my goal is to see if I can mitigate that a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of what I do.
You actually, I'm gonna, if we can, prompt on that question that you have here, or the statement you made there, Dr. Lee. You're considering on decreasing alcohol consumption during the holidays. What is going to be one of the tools that how are you going to implement that? What does that look like for you?
Right. So first is preparation, right? You know, if you know you're going to somewhere, that's the first thing. So making a commitment, actually a committed plan to do that, right? So we got intention of implementation, right? And so that's kind of what the first thing that I do. And so then I use a few tools, right? And so when you think about your triggers with respect to the behavioral loop, right? Let's say, you know, you get together with friends, it's alcohol, and so you all have a glass of wine, right? And so wine leads to something. So when you go to someone's house, it's not even just a glass of wine, but the thought of going to your friend's house for a gathering or your family's house, that's your trigger to actually consume a bit of alcohol. If every time there's a bit of alcohol, and it actually starts before you actually enter the house, it's expectation. It's also the craving, and that's what keeps these behavior loops going, is the craving, actually, right? And also there's a lot of rewards with it, right? So the wine makes us relax. You're with friends, your family. It's good times. It could be bad times, obviously, you know, some emotions come up and stuff like that, but hopefully it's all good and nice at the end. And so the other thing that I do is I slow my alcohol consumption down, right? And so I sip on a lot longer. And also I alternate I like sparkling water. I alternate with sparkling water. So that helps me metabolize the alcohol and reduces the alcohol concentration in my body. And I'll talk more about alcohol metabolism a little bit later, how that looks like, and how that affects kind of our own metabolism of other stuff that we're consuming that night too as well. So really it starts with the preparation, the intention to actually do that. And that's the first thing you need to do. And just kind of play by ear there. You know, I have a few tricks that I use. And as I mentioned, But Sam's going to give you some tools as well to do that. And you know what? It takes practice, to be honest with you. It's if you wing it, you're gonna fail it. You're gonna get zinged. But if you practice over and over, it becomes more habitual.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Some of the things that you brought up are going to be some of the tools that I'll discuss today with our people who are out here watching. Now, with this stress methods question that I've answered, we've had quite a few eating smaller portion sizes. We've had less in the increasing activity, but matching the eating smaller portion sizes is actually identifying negative thoughts and challenging. So I'm really happy to see that, those words weren't really defined in there. I haven't really explained what identifying negative thoughts is. It does sound scary, but some of you are actually starting to do that in your own way. And that's where I'm going to chat a little bit more about that as well as we go. So I'm going to close that poll down and we're going to get started in here. So I'm just taking just a few moments to do that. I'm going to be, I know you guys have pretty much got used to seeing our faces and doing some more interactive periods here. I'm actually going to put up a slide or two because I'm a visual learner myself, and I've got a few things that I will talk around that with. So I'm just going to do a little share screen here. And as I do that, in our chat section there, and you can let me know if you've got it or not. Sorry, I'm going to go back here, and I was warned by Lindsay today, just so you know, make sure you get the right screen pulled up here. So here we are, found it. So sharing screen today, and what I'm going to be going over with you guys is some cognitive behavioral tools that we can start using to reconstruct our thoughts and our process around stress eating, because this holiday season, the most common one we're going to be seeing is some of that stress eating component. So I'm just going to move on our slide here and have a look at one of the tools here that we're going to use. So, excuse me, I am wonderfully having some difficulties here. So first key around what Dr. Lee was mentioning there when I had queued, what is your behaviors like when it comes to alcohol? What do you see yourself doing when we're looking forward to drinking less? So in this queue is around eating habits. So first, what we really need to do is to actually identify those stress triggers. We all have a feeling of what we know. We kind of are aware of what some of those triggers may be, but we do need to take some time to actually sit down and be mindful with them. We actually have to sit down and record and be aware and journal it to make up these plans. As Dr. Lee said, we can't just go in and wing it as you get going. So recognizing these specific situations, your emotions, the stressors that can trigger you, the urge to eat. So this awareness is quite crucial for implementing targeted behavior changes. So this season, we're looking at those targeted behavior changes around these parties, around consumption as we go. So first of all, one of the main ones that most individuals will be aware of is some of their emotional triggers. These triggers can be around stress itself, whether it be work-related, relationships, parties, events. These all can sometimes trigger the urge for comfort eating, or not necessarily always being negative, but maybe it's continuing the sense of joy in those at the party itself. And as you keep on going. Other emotional triggers aside from stress, sadness, and loneliness. It's one of the effects around Christmas when it is a season where we're gathering and not everyone has great stories to gather with or doesn't have the family to gather with. And that may lead to itself for seeking solace in food. So that comfort as well. And the next, an emotional trigger that is most common, whether we name it this or not, is boredom eating. So what I would like you guys to do is you have the ability to print this form out and start filling out some of the emotional triggers that you feel that you may have. We then can move on to our environmental triggers. So here's another thing when we are enjoying the season is food availability. It doesn't matter where you are right now. Food is the language of love that we have named it as. So we are seeing food being given as gifts, as it is treats and candies, or we're at parties itself and they are sitting there on the table. So the mere presence of food, especially these unhealthy snacks, can also include that desire to eat, whether you wanted to or not. It's in that visual acuity. We have once again, the social situations, as I mentioned, with the gatherings and parties where food is in abundance. So we have the abundance, and then we have the availability. Routine and habitual triggers are another element that we need to look at. So all these 8 going around, we have to look at them all as we transfer through. So the mealtime routines are one thing that we want to look at for these triggers. So for some, the habit of eating at specific times, whether they're hungry or not, can lead to mindless eating. So we are all very known for this programmed eating. Eating because it's 8 o'clock, eating because it's 6 p.m., eating at noon because it's lunchtime. The advice that I can give you over the holiday season is actually listening to the cues when you are mindful enough to eat when you were hungry, trying not to eat just due to the fact that it's a time frame as you go. And that's to continue on well beyond our holiday seasons as well. We want to look at the associations with activities within that routine of habitual activities. So engaging in certain activities such as watching TV or working may be associated with habit of snacking. TV and snacking are a big thing that we talk to our patients with. It's that comfort zone. It's that sitting down. It's not a stress trigger, but it's a moment where we are faced with cues of comfort as we're going on through. Psychological triggers, we've got peer pressure. Definitely going to face peer pressure at these parties, even as adults. It definitely shows up when everybody else is drinking or everybody else is eating these foods. Sometimes we forget that our goals are involved, and we have that more element to kind of follow on suit, even though we had plans to kind of do something different. Comparison under psychological triggers there as well. So comparing oneself to others can actually trigger these stress elements as you go on through. Social triggers are within there. We can kind of pop a few points within there. The psychological triggers I actually put in there twice, I've realized here now. I apologize. I'm looking here back and forth. We've got our cognitive triggers. So mindless eating. Eating while distracted without paying attention to the act of eating can actually contribute to overconsumption. So something we want to be aware of as we're moving on through. Please write down all these triggers of your own. What triggers me may not trigger yourself. As I practice different things, you've practiced different things, you've been faced with different stressors. Then we have the cultural and society triggers as well. So festive occasions involve indulging foods, which can give you the overeating aspect, and societal norms and body image and beauty standards can contribute to these as well. So we're going to parties, you know, we're picked out this lovely dress, we haven't put it on before, we may feel a trigger within that, or emotions. So I'm just going to move on to our next element here. So once you've had the opportunity to actually go on board, write down your triggers, we must be clearly aware of what your triggers are so you can handle them. But we need to then go and identify maybe the negative thoughts that we have. So by questioning and challenging these negative thoughts, because we all have them, they're that pause moment of why we don't do something, or maybe, or that pause of I could and I don't. But it's to give you more balance and perspective and develop healthier beliefs and behaviors related to these habits. So first of all, when it comes on board here, what we're looking at, the negative thought that I'm going to throw out there for this example is I always overeat during holiday parties and I'll ruin my diet. I hear this often, the fact that I always do it, and that we're going to face this. We need to go into this reality check. So this is a question period that can feel sometimes challenging. You know, we are challenging those beliefs. So it's not going to be something that you're just going to kind of think of and move on by. We're going to have these emotions and these moments as we go on through. So first is that reality check. So I always overeat during holiday parties and I'll ruin my diet. So is this true? You know, the factual side of things. Do I actually always overeat during holiday parties, or is there times when I've practiced in moderation? We want to have that reflection, because you're going to find that there is certain activities and functions that you may have done that kind of sits within line with maybe I don't always. And we want to think of it as a scale from 1 to 10. Let's not think yes or no. Let's not think black or white. Let's actually give us a variances here of different activities that we've done. And you may find that it's 10 out of 10 on one and it's 9. Well, what made that 9? That 9 is amazing. I know it's so close to 10 that 9 is the change that you want to start looking at, because it will progressively change as we go. You want to look at the consequences. So this is where the challenge comes in. We're starting to sit down with the negative thoughts, and we're going to have to kind of soothe them as we go. But we do need to think about those consequences. What are the actual consequences of occasionally indulging in holiday treats? Some of them, consequences, one time out, one party, probably nothing. What are you holding on to then? What is that feeling? But maybe the consequences are that this week I've had 5 events in a row. So the consequences are that I may not actually be in line with my goal. How do I feel about that? And we really need to kind of sit in there with these consequences. And these consequences can hurt, but it's something that will help direct you as you move on through. We want to look at some alternate beliefs around that comment as well. Is it possible to enjoy gatherings without feeling compelled to overeat? Dr. Lee had mentioned there prior that he enjoys having a glass of wine. But the alternate belief is that he's telling us as well that he can actually go to a party and he's going to find some tools and steps how he can have balance. And that's what I'm looking for you guys as well in this time frame. It's not about, it's your goal. You need to come up with that, whether you say no or a variancy, but you need to come up with that alternate belief as well to look at. We want to look at mindful eating elements. So how can I practice mindful eating during the holiday parties to savor? And Claudie is actually going to get to some of that shortly as we go on through a little bit further. Do I have the ability to actually check in and listen to my hunger as I'm at this party? Can I check in to see, I've enjoyed that glass of wine. Why is it that I feel that I would like another one? How else can I obtain that? How else can I, that treat on the table over there, and there's another treat over here. How can I find that balance with myself? Next is a little self-compassion. We've been kind of, the first run of few of those questions are defensive. You're going to put your arms up and you're probably going to say for the first few times, yes or no. But that's self-compassion. Am I being too hard on myself? That question where I said 10 out of 10 and 9 is amazing if you were 10. So please don't be as hard on yourself, but we do need to go through these steps of these questions. And the next is it falling in line with my long-term goals? How does my current thinking, so such as my reality check-in, my consequences, my alternate beliefs, how do they fit in with my long-term health goal? Is it okay today if I'm working on it? This holiday season, just learning these tools here today, is it okay that I just put it into practice and I'm not perfect? Is there such thing as perfect? Every situation is different. I don't feel that there's a perfect element to identifying these thoughts and challenging them. The perfect part is you're challenging them. You've had the courage to get out there and ask yourself these questions. And it's just trying to find the moment and the safe place to do so. So when you're making these choices, the workability moment, this is kind of the short little element. Workability is act itself. So acceptance and commitment therapy is kind of like your best friend. It's a simple but powerful exploration. What are you doing and where is it taking you? So when we're picking these goals before you're going out to your party or during, when you're checking in and having that mindful moments, am I moving towards or away? And as I said here, explaining this to somebody earlier today, it was wonderful. Why? The question is why. I put my arms up kind of like this little element here. Am I towards or am I away in my why? Is it taking you towards the life you want to build? Is it taking you to the person you want to be? The things you want to do? If it is, it's workable. So if you're stuck in asking yourself the reality check in and all these things, the quick one you can do every so often throughout your day is just checking, what is the workability to this? Am I working towards or am I working away? If you're working away, ask yourself, go back and ask yourself questions again. Why is it that I feel that I'm working away? Why is it that I feel I'm working towards? What are those components as I go on through? And as we move on to the next tool, so these tools fall in line as we go. We need to ask one before we ask another to get where we're going. And this is where you had asked yourself the why question towards in a way, but we want to have the courage to experiment. So as we said, perfection is not the key. The more that you can experiment through the season and trial things out, you're going to find the pathway that fits you. It may fit you the first party and you're successful, but the second party may not be as it. So we want to experiment with different strategies to find out what works best for you. So what can I do? Where can I do it? Who will I do it with? How will I do it? And is to set out the plan of action. So as Dr. Lee was mentioning there, stepping out into the world, I need to come up with a plan before I get to that party, because if I have no plan, I'm probably just going to do with whatever is easy and whatever makes me feel good. But if I sit there and plan out, what can I do? What will I do it? How will I do it? There's a higher chance that you're actually going to fall in line with that experiment. And these are experiments. Please open your mind to the experiment, because you don't know, you haven't done it before. It may go one way or versus another. Then we go back to the beginning again. We do this cycle. It's a complete circle every single time. And you'll ask yourself, why didn't it work out? Okay, I accept that it didn't work out. I'm not going to be hard on myself, the self-compassion piece of it. But what can I implement in there to give me the hand as I move on through? Now, I'm just going to see here where I'm at. So the next one is where once we find that is looking at some coping skills and mechanisms. So that is where we kind of started off in our conversations there on asking, how would you manage your stress in these times? And there's several here on the list that you can see that are beneficial, that help on a neuroscience sense. So the brain waves and the sections of decision making and ability to move on through. There's the physical aspects that help. So we see that deep breathing exercises is a very important tool when it comes down to coping mechanisms. You will see it across the board from many different storylines of therapies that go on through. Now, I've put it as deep breathing exercises. I could have put it as mindfulness or different words out there. But mindfulness sometimes puts a little shift to our mind, and we think that we have to kind of sit in a position and we have to take time and we have to kind of block off the world. I just want you guys just to take a few moments and just take a few deep breaths in. Practicing the deep breathing exercises actually does help in regards to activate the relaxation response. Now, as I'm sitting there, I've realized now that I kind of jumped ahead of Dr. Lee in regards to the cortisol piece. So I'm going to pause right now for a second, because that mindfulness piece, that coping mechanism and that stress, deep breathing exercises and mindfulness, there is a lot of studies out there that it can help decrease and manage into that cortisol element. So Dr. Lee, tell me a little bit about stress, because these are the coping mechanisms itself, and what you're able to share in regards to cortisol, what it may be, and how it relates to stress itself and our management.
Yeah, so the way to think of stress is it's a system. Okay, and so we hear about cortisol as a stress hormone. It is, because it's kind of the last hormone that gets released along with the catecholamines, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and these are kind of things that allows us to handle the stress. And so when you think about stress, you can divide into two categories: acute stress, like fear, right, and chronic stress. And there's a big difference. And don't get me wrong, we actually need stress in our lives to actually survive, right? But chronic stress is not good. Acute stress can be, detrimental too as well. And you got to think about the evolution of things, and really whatever system we have, it's really for survival, right? And so in the acute stress, or just stress in general, we have a system called the hypothalamic pituitary axis, right? So it goes from the hypothalamus to our pituitary, which is in our brain. It goes to our adrenal glands, right? And that's the axis. And there's a negative feedback loop. Okay, so when we perceive threat, acute threat, let's say you get exposed to a tiger or a lion, well, that system is that fight or flight system, the sympathetic nervous system is going to kick in really quick. And so what your body's going to do is send a signal from the hypothalamus, some hormone, and that signal goes to the pituitary gland, and that pituitary gland is going to release another hormone, goes down to your adrenal gland. And the adrenal gland is kind of the final end organ in the endocrine system that releases a few things. So what's going to release? It's going to release like catecholamines, as I mentioned. So that's epinephrine, norepinephrine. What's that going to do? That's going to give you a ton more cardiac output, increase your blood pressure, increase your heart rate, going to cause vasoconstriction. You might be dry in the mouth too as well. And that's what happens, right? And so you feel more energized. At the same time, cortisol gets released in the glucocorticoids, and that's going to affect your brain. That's going to affect your liver. It's going to increase gluconeogenesis. That means you're going to make more glucose for more energy. It's going to break down your glycogen for more energy. It's going to break down your white fat cells, sorry, for energy too as well. And then it's also going to affect your brown fat, brown adipose tissue as well for energy as well, right? And it's going to increase your temperature. When you get stressed, sometimes you feel a little warm. So that's a thermogenic effect of that too as well, right? And so that's the acute stress. And now that allows you to get over your stress. So you got to run very fast, jump over things, you get scared and your heart rate goes up and then you calm down. So that's acute stress. So what happens in chronic stress? Let's say these holiday season, it's like weeks and weeks, and maybe we've been stressed at work already, at a big project, whatever. And life can be stressful, even for kids, like the bullying, all the things we hear about too as well, right? And they go to school 5 days a week, right? So week after week after week, they have to put up with all these kind of things that bother them. But in chronic stress, what happens is that, well, as I mentioned earlier, that you got this kind of breakdown of fat, and glycogen, and you break down this, like, you make new glucose. That's a good thing, right? Because you break down fat, you would, maybe lose weight. And that's actually true in the animal studies. So you looked at actually rat model studies. The rat actually loses weight, actually. And there are some of us that respond to stress by not eating, etc., all that kind of thing. And we shut down. And we lose weight that way too as well, right? So there is some variability, but when we think about the acute stuff, we do break down, right? It's a catabolic effect, right? Having said that, though, the body's really smart. It wants to keep you alive. That's its whole purpose, all your organs, okay? And so what it does, so if you're in a chronic state, the brain's going to say, okay, I got all this stress going on right now. It doesn't seem to be going away. It's been going for months and months and months. I mean, so any entrepreneurs, business owners, you're inundated with stress. You got kids, daily stress, right? And so the body's like, well, I need to have enough energy to survive this chronic stress. So what happens is these hormones, these cortisols and stuff like that, affect other parts of our brain too as well. So then we have to have increased food intake. We crave more refined food too as well. It changes our sleep, and so that changes our decision making, ability to cope with too as well. The body starts to bring in more fat and deposit fat in a visceral fat region, in our peripheral fat region too as well. And there's actually a bit of distribution of the fat too as well. And if it's chronic enough and you don't eat enough food or calories, what do you do? What happens, right? You waste. So if you ever looked at people who are on like prednisone steroids, that's exogenous. Exogenous means that we bring into our body steroids, right? Glucocorticoid, right? It's called prednisone. And so what happens, these individuals is like they actually start to gain weight, but their limbs and the weight gain is actually in the central part of the body. So their face, the back of their neck, right? And we call it Cushing syndrome, right? And the belly gets increased, and they get this kind of something called striae, these skin changes, right? But having said that, though, they put on this weight, but their extremities get smaller, right? They lose muscle mass, right? So that's what happens to kind of our body kind of in a way when we have chronic stress. So we start to deposit more fat into our visceral fat, more fat into our peripheral fat too as well. And that increases our risk for cardiovascular disease, right? And so that's why you don't want to have that. The other thing is this: chronic stress, cortisol, reduces your immune system. Just like prednisone, it kind of dampens our immune system. We call it like immunocompromised. We actually become more immunocompromised, right? And so have you ever been stressed for like about 4 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, maybe, and like, or you have an exam period, and after the exam period you get sick? That's the reason, right? You have the strong cortisol level all these times. You have all the resources going into survival, and afterwards, and everything is done. Boom, that's when you're most vulnerable. Is usually, or you get a cold sore, right? You get the herpes simplex virus. It never disappears. It stays in our ganglion cells and stuff. And it's an opportunistic kind of infection, and meaning that when we're weak and tired, or for whatever reason, stress typically, it comes back and bites us in the left, right? And so that's what happens. So, and there are ways to combat chronic stress. You know what I mean? One of the best ways is actually sleep, eating well, taking your antioxidants, good hydration too as well. And exercise is one of the best things you can do to reduce stress, even though it increases your blood pressure, the catecholamines, all that kind of stuff. But it's a positive stress. And I said stress can be positive too as well. And that's why you need a bit of stress in life. And people don't realize that when you exercise, actually it's a stress to the body, right? There's a lot of work involved, stress on your bones, joints, etc., all that kind of stuff. So that's a positive stress. So that's what happens to us when we have chronic stress. So those are adaptations to the body. So hopefully that kind of helps you kind of understand stress, how it affects our weight, but also, how we can combat it too as well, just to minimize that.
Perfect. Thank you. I found that beautiful opportunity to kind of slide you in with it. And, you mentioned a few of the other coping mechanisms that were on my list there as well. And, when it comes down, the reason I put deep breathing as that first tool, it's one of those things that we can kind of pick up and do anywhere. We can't exercise all the time. We can't do all these things, but it's just a moment to oneself to unwind. And the purpose when we're looking at it, as Dr. Lee said, it works on the ANS portion of the brain. So it's the autonomic nervous system, which is responsible for regulating involuntary body functions. So your heart rate, your respiratory rate, those type of things. So we're able to kind of soothe and bring those physical cues of stress of what we feel. And when it comes down to deep breathing, it does not have to be anything special, but just sitting there, taking a few moments, and we can kind of, one easy way to kind of remember today is maybe we can do some box breathing. So is taking a nice few deep breaths in and holding it for the same amount of time that we breathed in, and then we're going to exhale. And it's just taking some time of just focusing on one's breath. So as if you said to yourself, I'm going to just take 30 seconds to breathe, just a time out of 30 seconds in my car as I go. And all I want to kind of think about in that time is my breath. So as I'm breathing in, I actually want to feel the air kind of move in within lungs. I want to feel my chest rise. I want to feel myself holding it. And, at some point you may notice your mind wander, but we want to go back and say, you know what, I'm just here to breathe. I am only here to breathe. I'm going to go back and listening to the breath as we go. There's also something called progressive muscle relaxation as well, that can help with stress elements as you go on through. And it's just motions with our body as well. We're causing tension within the body. We're feeling it nice and tight. And then we're doing a release for a moment. And it's just to really feel the motion and the feelings and sensations in the body. And what this is, we're not thinking about the breath in this one, but we're feeling about the tension as we're squeezing. I feel tension in the arms, and then we've got some sense of relaxation. And it's just a coping mechanism, a tool that you can use for distraction as you go. Now, some of the other tools that I had on there as well, that Claudia, I'm actually going to hand it over to you, is to think about, one more actually, before I get to you, boundaries, coping mechanism of starting to set boundaries for oneself. So that's the rule set that we have. But I just wanted to make sure that was put in there. It's on the list that you have in your PDFs available for you in our chat feature. But Claudia, mindful eating is an important aspect over a holiday season. So tell us a little bit about your techniques and your teachings around mindful moment, or some of your experiences with yourself. And then we'll move on to Dr. Lees and these alcohol elements.
Absolutely. So some of the techniques that I find out that it works for me, and I share that with a lot of patients, and I got good feedbacks from them, are I do have plans. I'm a planner. I do have plans prior to the event, during the event, and after the event. So I get myself ready. The events that we already know it's happening, Christmas, Thanksgiving, these are the set things that we can plan. And I feel like I like to be in charge of planning about it. So prior to the event, I feel like, okay, what have I done for the previous year? What worked for me and what didn't? I do have this list of do's and don'ts. So what did I do that I prefer to not do it again? Or what have I done, or what kind of a behavior I showed around food that I think it was beneficial? And it's something that I want to promote it this year. So I have do's and don'ts, and just kind of build up on do's and try to be mindful of don'ts prior to the events. And I also try to find out, okay, who's coming to the events, kind of plan, because I usually know Mrs. X always bring pies. The other one always be, okay, where I'm going is not going to be much of a vegetables. I'll be the one that bring the vegetables, because I want to make sure there's at least a little bit of a healthy stuff, right? So I try to, I'm not saying study the event, but I get myself ready for it prior to and not during the event. First of all, I put some challenges for myself. I challenge myself to chew at least 40 times each bite, put my fork down and chew and smile to everybody and talk. And I don't have to go for the second bite unless I breathe like at least 5 times, deep breathe, and then talk to people and then go for the second bite. So slow eating brings that mindful, brings you to the like a present moment. You enjoy your meal better. You enjoy the aroma, the colorfulness of the food. So it's not only that you're enjoying it, but more your stomach will, thank you later. So it has all the benefits. So during the event, what I learned is that focusing on the event and people that I'm meeting is more important than, oh, Mrs. X bringing this kind of food. I cannot wait to get some of that. Yes, I was always feeling like that. Oh my gosh, this is like so and so cooks very well. But now I take the focus off of the food and I say, okay, I'm seeing so and so that I haven't seen them for months. I'm gonna enjoy conversations with them. So and kind of plays like I play these games that I'm gonna pay attention to body languages, who does what, who plays with their fingers when they talk, like Persians, Italians, all those things. These are all cues that keep me occupied and take my mind off of the food. And also after the event, after the whatever, how many days that I had celebrations and gatherings, what I learned is increasing my water walks and greens help me get rid of what I gained or the water retention much faster. So these are the tips that I use, and I honestly think it's some of them it's simple and easy. Some of them they seem easy, but they're not that easy to practice. What I learned is that I need to, as you mentioned, Sam, I need to have compassion for myself. I take this pressure off of my mind that I need to lose weight during the holidays. I'm just going to focus on me being mindful of what I do and do the right thing and make the best decision at that moment. The best decision I make today might not be the best decision that I usually make, but it's the best decision for right now. So I'm going to be okay with that. So that compassion, I think it took a lot of stress off of my mind. So it helps me to be feeling like, as I said, I'm in charge. I have control over what I put in my plate. And it makes it easier to have fun and enjoy that event.
Exactly.
Those are
So
great points.
it's not about, not having it. It's about balance, about being compassionate with oneself as we go.
Yes.
having your
Yes.
cake and eating it too, in that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
committing to take breaks every so often as you're going through conversation and eating, or having one drink versus more. So that is my segue to you, Dr. Lee,
Yeah,
having one drink or more. I'm going
yeah.
to have you kind of talk a
I,
little bit about alcohol
yeah,
consumption
I'm
and what
just
it
gonna tell a
means.
little study that that just popped in my brain when Claudia was talking about chewing and stuff. I love it because they actually studied that actually in weight loss. That if you chew, I want to say it's like more than 20, about 25, 30 times, right? Uh, it correlates with actually weight loss with people who chew less, actually. And so that was a very, very good insight in terms of chewing and stuff like that. And you're absolutely right, man. This, you know, this is a battle, right? The war is the rest of your life for weight management, right? And so don't beat yourself up. Have your cake and eat it too. You know, focus on your friends and families, you know, that you're with, and it's the good times. You don't remember the food, but you remember the friends and family, right? So you know, part of that is alcohol. You know, it's an accepted norm, obviously, for pretty much the world, and so it can be, you know, detrimental for weight management. But you know, I'm not gonna talk about, you know, the bad side of things and stuff like that, and you know what it can do to people. But just from a physiological metabolism perspective, so you understand what's happening, and maybe when you have a drink, you can make a better choice, right? This is about choice, like Claudia's talking about. You know, you can have, you know, a cooler, or you can have, you know, like a gin and tonic, right? Or gin and soda is what I like, gin and soda, right? If I was gonna have something. And so what happens when we drink alcohol? Well, first of all, if you recall, like I talked in the past about, you know, certain macronutrients have certain calories, right? So um carbohydrates and protein, 4 calories, sorry, yeah, 4 calories each, and then fat, there's 9 calories, but there's 7 calories actually in alcohol. It's quite a lot. And in terms of drinks, typically there are other carbohydrates within it too as well, right? But when you drink alcohol, it's a toxin to the body, right? And so the liver is the detox center. So imagine if you have a lot of alcohol. So really, it's about the amount you're drinking and how fast you're consuming it too as well. So if your blood alcohol level rises faster, your metabolism is going to change a lot faster because it's a toxin. The body wants to get rid of it first, right? And that's what it's going to do. So it's going to shut down or dampen down the metabolism of other foods that you're eating too as well, right? So let's say you have a cocktail, it's got some sugar in it and stuff like that. And so all the sugary stuff is going to kind of hang around your body. It's going to be processed, it's going to be taken in, but it's not going to be utilized and broken down right away, right? The body's going to detox your alcohol level. And your detox is proportional to your body size, right? And so if you have a compromised liver, you have maybe a fatty liver or some inflammation, you know, we call it NASH. It's called MASH now instead. You know, the non-alcoholic steatohepatitis type of inflammation. Then maybe your alcohol detox can be a little less. So for myself, I probably detox a lot slower than someone who's maybe 6 feet, right? And so that plays a role. And so one of the things that I mentioned, you know, that I do is I sip a lot of water in between, right? One, it keeps me more sober, and so your faculties are working better too as well, and so you're making better food choices. But your blood alcohol stays kind of lower too as well, right? So that's what happens. So as you start to metabolize your alcohol, then the other process, well, your metabolism will go back to normal too as well, right? So chronic alcohol use, though, if you drink it on a regular basis, and so there are new guidelines that are coming out. You know, they're not talking about kind of, you know, how many drinks you should have, what is a safe point. It's just at risk. You know, one, you're at zero to one, you're at pretty much zero risk. 1 to 2, you're at a higher risk. And so you got to define where you are on that risk. You know, if you're drinking on a regular basis, you might be at a higher risk.
I'm going to share that now, Dr.
Oh
Lee,
yeah,
here,
if you want to
as you're,
share
as you're
that, then
talking.
yeah. So they
So
talk about, like, you know, risk factors before two drinks is safe. You know what? There's really no safe level. Alcohol is a toxin. Okay, it's what risk level you are willing to accept, right? You know, for me, I'm a low risk kind of guy. You know, and some occasion I'll be moderate risk. I have a little more drinks on a weekend, right? But I try to minimize that. So you got to be really mindful of your alcohol consumption. Now, not only that, you know, I'm going to say this because this is what the data shows, is that there is no strong connection that they found as of yet with alcohol consumption and obesity. Okay. But we know that it can affect your cardiovascular system and all these things, meaning that, when you drink alcohol on a regular basis, your lipid profile goes up, it's increased inflammation, it hurts your liver, so it hurts, the central nervous system. It is a toxin. It affects the entire body. Okay. But having said the facts are the facts, there are no strong evidence that it causes obesity, right? And so if anything, people drink a lot, they actually don't eat. They can become nutritional deficient, so they actually lose weight, right? But don't use it as a tool to lose weight, right? So that's kind of what happens with alcohol. And so that's why, the next day I typically we'll have some fasting so that I can detox. So in terms of consumption of alcohol, if you had a choice, okay, spirits are the best, like gin or vodka, tequila, that straight with water, because it's just pure alcohol, right? There's no really sugar content in that, right? But when you start to mix it with cocktails and stuff like that, then you have the sugar content, right? So that's kind of I know. So you have, let's say, rum and Coke. So the Coke part is probably the worst part, right? A bit of rum with a bit of water is probably going to be okay, right? Better as a better choice. So you have actually choices to choose what is better, right? And so you look at the wines, okay? If you like dry wines, that's good for you. White wines tend to be more sweet, right? So they have a higher sugar content. And if you have an LCBO app, you can actually scan that and look at what is a dry wine. It's typically less than 6 to 8 grams per liter, right? So for me as a wine guy, I drink between 2 and 4, right? And so if you actually pick more of a dry wine, it actually helps you a little bit too as well, right? There's less sugar. So white wine tends to have a little more too. So beer tends to be have more carbohydrate content than the wines, just depending on how sweet it is. And so your hierarchy typically goes, the best, most, I guess, least calorie dense would be your spirits, right? Followed by maybe dry wines, and so and typically reds are more dry than whites, right? And then you have obviously your mixed drinks with the alcohol kind of having the most sugar content. And so as Claudia said, you have choices, and as Sam said, you can have your cake and eat it too. So hopefully that helps you kind of navigate a little bit, and then just sip, enjoy. If you like wine, you like it for a reason. Not hopefully to just to forget about things and the buzz, but actually the taste of wine. And so appreciating the food that you're eating, and that's the mindfulness part. Is the appreciation, mindfulness is very important.
But if it is about the buzz and it is about the relaxation, think about it. That's all. It's just a matter of thinking about, well, why is it that I need that tool? Or, let's just take away alcohol. Why do I need to feel that way? How can I, what are some other options as well? Today's option is actually just thinking, being aware of it, of those choices. Now, we did talk about some good spirits. We know that we all may or may not be involved in some alcohol or a change of alcohol drinking in the season, whether it be over celebrating season here or New Year's as we go. But on our blog, so if you head over to our website, I have got a brief of pretty much what we have touched base in a different view, but I have in there talking about, what have I got here? I'm looking at my website here, gin and tonic with a twist. So little different things in there. So such as enjoying a classic gin and tonic with a twist by adding fresh herbs, cucumbers, or berries for flavor without the need for sugary mixers. So looking for alternatives, get in there, have some fun with your different Googles of recipes. They'll be slightly different, but what you're looking for is to do better than 10 out of 10 being bad. Let's start looking and bringing that down. Does it have to be 1? It very well could be, it could be, I'm actually going to choose to have a dry December or a dry January. That is great, but think about the resources of, what you're going to do in that replacement. So please do pop over and have a look at that blog, and our social media. This one does have, it's a cleaner option, but I think we did do a Cosmopolitan, didn't we? As a recipe out there, Claudia, as an idea of just without sugars and additives in there, because we know that definitely we'd love to share with you that, 0 to 1 is for a week is probably preferred and healthier for our bodies. But we can't just go and tell you, no, don't have it, because we know it's going to probably be there and accessible. So finding those best routes. So we do look forward to seeing you on our blogs, on our webinars here, and our social media to kind of fill in those needs. If you do have any questions in regards to today's webinar, please do reach out at info@howclinics.com to give us any responses or questions, or even future webinars. If you've got any ideas of what you are dealing with, please reach out, because that's what we're here for. We're here for you. So we thank you again from How Clinics, from myself, Samantha Upshaw. We've got Dr. Jamie Lee as well, and Claudia Kazadi, our health coach. So we look forward to either seeing you on a webinar or in clinics during our program for weight management. So
Have a
take
great
care,
holiday.
folks. Have a great season. I can't wait to well, not that I need a few days off, Dr. Lee, but I can't wait to kind of sit down with family,
For sure.
friends, and enjoy the culture of food and everything that's around, and bringing forward my vegetables, as Claudia says, bringing them along to the party as well.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Happy holidays.